So Don't Worry Darling is out. It's finally out and people are watching it. And it's getting fucking slammed by critics. Like people are saying this movie is shit. And I watched it and it was a movie. um Everyone was making fun of it. First off, I don't want to talk about the drama too much in this review because that's not what this channel is about. I'm just here to review the film. I'm just here to review the story. I'm not here to review drama with real people. All I got to say about that is um, Harry Styles was right when he said this movie feels like a movie. I just dropped something. But anyways, he said this movie feels like a movie. And he's right, it does. Is it a great movie? No. Is it a terrible movie? I wouldn't say that. It's just a really movie. So, obviously, just like Mia Goth carries Pearl, Florence Pugh absolutely. I have like whereas Mia Goth's performance um is what made Pearl, Florence Pugh's performance in Don't Worry Darling is what carries it. Because if it wasn't for her, I'd probably feel a lot less towards this movie. She is the only thing that I liked. And even then, her actual character feels very underwritten. She's not a great character. It's just that Florence Pugh plays it so well. Like you can really tell that Florence Pugh is doing everything she can to try and make this character as layered as possible. But there's only so much you can do with this script because the character is nothing more than a vessel for the audience. This might as well have been a first person video game where you just like you're playing as you know, and you have no personality and all the characters are talking to you. Um but let's talk about the good stuff. Like I said, Florence Pugh is amazing. No doubt about that. She's the best actress in this movie, and we'll get to the acting in a bit. Um, Production design of this movie, really neat, really fun, captures the 50s aesthetic really well while also feeling like a sort of. It feels like the 50s, but it also doesn't feel like a real place, which is good for this movie. Like, it feels like even just looking at it, even if you knew nothing about this movie, if you just saw this place, you'd be like, there's something off about it, which is good. Um, Cinematography, it's not like amazing, but it's good. There's some decent shots. It's shot pretty well. Um, any other good stuff? Chris Pine is fine. He does a decent job. Um, yeah, let's get into the bad stuff because unfortunately there's a lot of bad stuff. So, first thing, biggest thing wrong with this movie is just the writing. The writing in this movie is very weak for both the story and the characters. In terms of the characters, all of them feel very underwritten and bland and one note. Florence Pugh's character is just, oh, what is she gonna see this time that's really weird and makes her go, what? You know? Harry Styles' character is just, oh, he's the husband character. That's who he is. Chris Pine is just kind of the slimy, weird guy who you're suspicious of. You know, Gemma Chan is. I'm sorry. Did I pronounce her name right? I'm really sorry if I said her name wrong. But you know, she's Chris Pine's wife. Nick Kroll is Nick Kroll. Olivia Wilde is Olivia Wilde. All the characters are very just underwritten and not super interesting. Florence Pugh, I like. It's like I said, like her character's underwritten as well, but her performance is able to like elevate that character. Another thing about this movie that's really bad is the acting. The acting in this movie I found was not that great. From like people are shitting all over Harry Styles' performance, saying it's terrible. I wouldn't say it's like Razzie worthy, but it is a little inconsistent. There are scenes where his accent kind of slips in and out, and there's a scene later on in the movie where they just straight up say, even though you can tell he's going for an American accent in the film, they just straight up say like, "Oh, he's British," even though he clearly wasn't written that way initially. They're just like, "Oh shit, his accent. There's nothing we can do about it. Fuck it, he's British." You know, he isn't terrible. I bought him in that role. Um, but the problem is he's acting against Florence Pugh, who is one of the best actresses working today. And every time they share a scene together, which is a lot, she is acting circles around him. She is just like, wow. This is ridiculous. It's the kind of performance where if you saw someone give this performance in like a middle school play, you would think to yourself, "Oh, that's really good." But for a for a professional actor in a feature film, I don't want to be too mean to the guy because I'm sure he's getting shit on by a lot of people right now. I mean, what does he care what I think? He's rich and I'm not, but but yeah, I mean, he's not great. He's not terrible though. But you know who I found actually much worse than Harry Styles? Olivia Wilde. I thought Olivia Wilde was really bad in this movie. I thought her character was just like playing up the whole like, oh, there's something off about this place, you know? Like she's just super nice, like not nice, but she just plays up that character so. Everybody else at least felt like a natural human being, but she's just like, oh yes, we're going to have a cookout tomorrow, and it's gonna be fun. We want you all to join. Like, you know, when someone's trying to act overly nice, but you know they're really like passive aggressive. It's like that, but not in a good way. In this way, she's trying to act natural, but you can just tell, and you're like, okay, she's like trying to telegraph like that there's something weird about this place way too early to the audience. It's just bad. Chris Pine, even though he did a fine job acting, his character is so ridiculously cartoonishly evil. Like there's a scene, I'm gonna get into spoilers now, sorry, but there's a scene where he's like revealing to Florence Pugh that he's actually evil and he actually has really sinister plans. And the way he talks is like, bro, you might as well have like a cat that you're petting on your lap while you're explaining the shit. He's like, yes, what you're about to witness is something you will never be able to stop. And he has really cliche villain dialogue, and he has a really cliche villain speech where he's like, we can do this, we are the future. Like, you know, every villain like villain that gives a speech like that says the same shit. We are the future, we will rise, you know, like that stuff. And it's just like, well, come on. And Nick Kroll just plays Nick Kroll, you know. So nothing to say there. Yeah. So another thing about this film that's bad is just the story. The story of this film is really generic. Really generic. Like it's a typical, oh, she thinks her world is ordinary, but there's actually something sinister lying underneath. Like you've seen this kind of movie all the time. Like this is just like Truman Show or fucking Free Guy. It's literally Free Guy, except like without the comedy. This is a better movie than Free Guy for sure. But like yeah, it's just like really typical. To be fair, I didn't think it was going to be a simulation. I thought it was actually going to be a TV show. That's really what I was predicting. I was predicting they were going to reveal that there was like a director behind all this shit or something. But no, it's a simulation, and it's like whatever. But it leaves you with a lot of questions, like how long has Florence Pugh been in this place? Like has she been there for years in her life? Does she just like, because it seems like she's been in that place for years, or at least she thinks she has. So does she have like fake memories, or did she just get in there, or what? They don't really explain that. And I'm not saying you need to explain everything, but it just leaves you with a lot of questions about the place, you know. And she, you know, it's just like, why is she just noticing all this stuff now? You know what I mean? Like, is anybody else noticing this stuff? I don't know. Movie doesn't explain it, and you know. And then there's a lot of pretentious bullshit in this movie where like there's this like running theme throughout the movie where there's this team, like there's this dance group, and they just have this choreographed number, and they just keep dancing throughout the movie, and it means nothing. Like there's a lot of stuff in this movie that like it's a cool visual, it's neat, it's a neat sequence, but it doesn't really mean anything. Like there's a scene where Florence Pugh is like cleaning glass, and then the glass starts like closing in on her, and you're just like, okay, what does that mean? Is she going crazy? Did that really happen? Is that a glitch in the simulation? But like, you know, a movie like The Shining, it leaves you with questions, but in a good way. This movie leaves you with questions in a bad way. I think The Shining is written just vague enough. Like the difference between a movie like The Shining and this is that The Shining is vague, while this feels underwritten. Like it feels like a first draft of a film, where I feel like we should have gotten to know more about this world, you know? Like The Shining is purposely vague. It gives you conflicting information, but it knows it's doing that. Whereas this film sort of introduces something, but doesn't really go into why it's happening or how it's happening. It just has something happen, and then he never brings it up again. You know, it just feels like an excuse to put a lot of stuff in the trailer. Like there's a scene where Florence Pugh goes under like a bath, like she goes into the water, but then her reflection is still looking back. Why is that happening? Realistically, I've seen the whole movie. I know what happened. There's really no reason for that to be happening. Uh, yeah, it feels like a first draft of a script. And then the ending of the film, some people found unsatisfying. I didn't mind it. You know, we don't really need to see her wake up. We just need to hear her. It's like, okay, cool, she made it. Good for her. We got all the information there. That's fine. But it's like, so what happened to that world? Are they all just trapped in there? Are they gonna leave? And then characters make decisions that like just don't make sense. Like Gemma Chan kills Chris Pine, and I'm just like, I don't know where this came from, but I guess she did that. Is she gonna rule the place now? Or is she gonna leave? Why would she want to rule the place? Is she killing him because he captured her, I guess? How is she gonna leave? Is she also gonna go to the headquarters? How come all the women didn't follow her? You know? Yeah, it's like... It's not a terrible movie. It was entertaining enough. It kept my attention for 2 hours. I was never bored. I was always like enjoying it fine. It's a fine movie. But I think it wants to be it wants to be like this like a movie where you watch it a bunch of, like I'm thinking of ending things or something. It wants to be like that kind of movie where it's like you got to watch it multiple times to really understand the meaning and find all the hidden references, and it wants to have a lot of deep symbolism. But it's a film that really doesn't have a lot to say. It's just at its core, when you really, it's just a very surface level film. Doesn't really have anything interesting to say. Doesn't really have a lot of. I think it tried to be vague and mysterious, but it just felt like undercooked. You know what I mean? Florence Pugh really carries it. She absolutely carries it. There's some neat production design. There's some neat cinematography. It's entertaining. It kept my attention. But there's nothing about this film that I would say is special, and that's a shame. Really, the film feels like an extended version of the trailer. Like, you could watch the trailer and be like, oh, wow, she's stuck in this world, and there's weird shit going on. That's what I got from the trailer. And that's what the movie is for the first hour and 40 minutes until the end when they reveal, oh, it's actually this. Like, the movie is actually kind of repetitive. Like, every scene is like Florence Pugh just hanging out, and then something weird happens, and she's all confused. Rinse and repeat for 2 hours. Well, an hour and a half, and then the last 20 minutes. In the last 20 minutes, it turns into like an action movie. It's so weird. Like, there's a car chase, and you're just like, okay. There's some neat shots, but they don't mean anything to the movie. Like in Get Out, when Chris is in the sunken place. That's a great shot, but, you know, it also is an integral part of the story. Here, there's a bunch of shots like that, but they mean nothing to the story. They don't even mean much to the themes of the movie. I feel like this film, like, wants to have some kind of maybe social commentary, but it doesn't really have much to say. Like, that's how I felt with this movie. It's a film that feels like it has something to say, but it doesn't quite know. It wants to say something, but it doesn't know what that something is. That's how I felt this whole time. You know? Yeah, I'm just... I wasn't disappointed with this movie. I mean, I kind of was, because I thought the trailer looked really neat. I was actually like, oh, this looks fun. But now that I've seen it, I knew the reviews going into it were kind of low, so I was like, oh, maybe it's not that good. But maybe I'll like it. And I wouldn't say it's like 36%. I think it's around there at the time of recording this. I don't think it's that bad, but it's nothing really that special. I'd probably give it a 5, maybe even a 6 out of 10, because like I said, I was entertained by it. But that's the problem, is that it's it wants to be this elevated, really smart movie, but it isn't. It's just sort of a typical, like, oh, I'm trapped in this weird world and I don't know how to get out kind of story. You know, but it wants to be more than that, but it's not. It's a very surface level movie. You know, at the end of the day, it's just like, I'm trapped in a simulation movie when it wants to be something more than that. It's not. So yeah, Don't Worry, Darling is not a terrible movie. I wouldn't say it's a bad movie at all. I wouldn't say it's a bad film. It just it needed a few rewrites, and it just like I don't know. I felt like I didn't get much out of it. I felt like Harry Styles' character, especially, when they reveal who he is, I still feel like I didn't really know a lot about him. And maybe that was by design. I didn't really feel like I knew a lot about Florence Pugh's character. I didn't really feel like I knew a lot about anything in this movie. I didn't really know much about Florence Pugh's character, or Harry Styles' character, or um, or the world, the victory, the place of victory. It's a simulation, sure, but like it just leaves you with a lot of questions. Surprisingly, the best character, the character I felt like I knew the most about was Olivia Wilde's character, because at the end of the film she's like, I want to stay here because I won't lose my kids this time. It's like one line of dialogue and immediately you get it. She lost her kids, she went crazy from it, and she's now in this world where she can be with her kids. One line of dialogue tells us so much. It's like, where was this writing for the rest of the film? But yeah, Don't Worry, Darling. My favorite thing about it is it feels like a movie.